Brought to you by GoFigureNews.com. Hey there, YouTubers and collectors. This is Salvador Los Angeles here with a special show and tell video featuring my entire UFC Round 5 collection. So I'm excited to share this with you today. Starting off with Bruce Lee. Many Bruce Lee figures have been made by Round 5. These are just a few of them. I do not have all Bruce Lee figures by Round 5, nor do I have all UFC fighter figures made by Round 5. This is a beautiful bronze UFC figure there. I'm sorry, a beautiful bronze Bruce Lee figure. Really excited to have that. And there, of course, there's Royce Gracie, first UFC champion, a living legend. With the wrong belt on, by the way. There is an older looking belt. Bruce Lee in the yellow jumpsuit, I really like that one a lot. I gave it to an old friend and then had to buy a new one to replace it. This little guy here, he's a Titans. Round 5 made these little figures called Titans. A lot of fighters are made in that format too, but that's the only one I got is that little Bruce Lee. And there is the shirtless one, you know, the one who was in the front of the shelf. There he is in his package. I did want to leave a few of these figures in their package because there's no more Round 5. Round 5 Corporation is gone, out of business. So this video is bittersweet here for me, and I have about 3 or 4 Round 5 figures in package, and here are 2 right there, the Bruce Lee ones. And then I'm going to be sharing in a second here the Georges St. Pierre UFC Round 5 figure. So there's Bruce Lee, made by Round 5. All right, so here is GSP, Georges St. Pierre, former UFC welterweight champion. Now there are many different kinds of figures made by Round 5. There's Fan Expo exclusives, there's Ultimate Collector, Limited Edition, Regular Edition. I'm not certain what edition this is, but this is a very nice GSP in package. All right, so here is the bulk of my Round 5 UFC collection. First of all, there is the UFC Championship belt. Chuck Liddell fighting Randy Couture. Those are taller figures, part of the UFC Live collection. They only made those 2, and they were on clearance for a while. They didn't sell so well, I suppose. I guess that UFC figures have not sold so well overall, but I have to fault UFC themselves, because I got to tell you, never once has a UFC broadcast told me about them selling figures. Oh, by the way, real quick, that is Johnny Cage trying to steal a UFC belt. I liked putting them there. Never once did the UFC broadcast ever tell any of us that there were UFC figures available, whether by Round 5, this company here, or Jakks Pacific, the company that used to have the license. Some of you may know Jakks Pacific. Their figures were highly articulated, similar to wrestling figures, actually, similar to the Mattel or Jakks Pacific wrestling figures. There's a Predators. Predators are overseeing the UFC fighters. This is sort of my warrior shelf, I call it. I've also got some Pacific Rim figures. So there's 2 different kinds of Round 5 UFC figures, I would say. One is the old style and one is the new style, just to put it simply. The newer style, like the ones you see right in front of you, they try to make a little more realistic. The one over there, the one that Frank Mir, if you notice Frank Mir, he's got sort of a little more of a cartoony look. I really first fell in love with those ones, the little bit of a cartoony look. I really appreciated those. So I liked the caricatures even more than the actual realistic ones. There's Antonio Nogueira. That's an old style one. See, a little bit cartoony looking, not as realistic. And we're going to see in a moment the other version, the newer version of Antonio Nogueira. There are a lot of fighters I still have not gotten. I don't think I have a Glover Teixeira, and I know there's a few other fighters that I don't have. I may just add maybe 5 figures I need to add to this, and that'll probably cap it all off. Not to mention I'm officially out of room on the top of my desk. This is also a very interesting time in UFC because some of you may know they are soon to institute the uniform policy. The UFC has just signed a 6-year huge deal with Reebok, so they're going to be having their fighters wear official uniforms. So the days when fighters can walk out in whatever shirt they wanted, whatever shorts they wanted to have on, and you know, when they're announcing the names, when Bruce Buffer announces the names, they've got the banner behind them. Those days are going to be over pretty soon. I think by spring of 2015, we're going to start seeing fighters in uniforms and exclusive Reebok endorsement deals. So we're going to see how that all goes down. But it's a very interesting time in not only the UFC, but MMA in general. That's the only John Bones Jones figure that I like. There's one or two others. That's the only one that I do enjoy. And a couple different versions of Vitor Belfort there. See the one with the shirt and the one in front of him? So it's an old version and a new version. That Matt Hughes, I love that Matt Hughes. That's probably one of my favorite figures, is that little Matt Hughes back there. They also made a newer version of Matt Hughes, but I don't think I got that one. There's the Diaz brothers. Had to put them in there, of course, standing near one another. I wanted to borrow a joint from my Cheech and Chong figures to have it in their hands. Bruce Buffer, I bought him loose. He was not hard to, it was not easy to find. Joe Rogan was not easy to find. And when I say easy to find, I mean at a decent price. That Randy Couture right there, right behind Gina Carano, is the old style. See, compared to the other Randy Couture to Gina's right. So two different versions of Randy Couture. One more realistic, one a little more cartoony. I find it very interesting that Thiago Silva is doing that "I'm gonna kill you" a symbol with his hand, because we all know what kind of trouble he was in. So very apropos, almost like a weird omen. Former champion Benson Henderson there, Donald Cerrone there underneath Chuck and Randy. And I did position a few figures a certain way. For example, there you have Randy Couture staring at the back of Dana White's head. Some of you fans may know the squabbles that have been between Randy Couture and Dana White. Andrei Arlovsky, I think that's one of the first UFC figures by Round 5 that I got, and he comes with a little pit bull. I think aside from a UFC belt and maybe Rampage with his chain, Andrei Arlovsky's pit bull is the only figure that came with an accessory. There is Anderson Silva staring at Chris Weidman, giving him the stink eye look. So I did position a couple of fighters a certain way. Or should I say I might have just found them that way accidentally and then thought, hey, that looks cool. So there's Randy Couture staring at Dana White and Anderson Silva staring at Chris Weidman. There's John Fitch. Also something that was also announced today, John Fitch is one of the fighters who's suing the UFC. The UFC is being sued by John Fitch, Nate Marquardt, I think, or was it Nate Quarry? One of the Nates. And Kung Lee apparently is listed also, suing the UFC for antitrust laws and having a monopoly over the industry. That was just announced today, so we're going to see how that plays out. I really love how Rampage Jackson has that chain, man, because I'll tell you, the Jack Pacific figures never came with a chain. Fans would always say, when are we going to get a chain? So that one came with a chain. That's cool. There's another version of Rampage Jackson there as well. And the back there we got Vanderlei Silva and Daniel Cormier. Another, I have a couple of Junior Dos Santos. There's Rashad Evans. I have a couple of Brock Lesnar's as well. And behind all the fighters, you're going to be seeing a couple of 18-inch NECA Pacific Rim figures, unless, I don't think we missed those already. Here's a championship row, Jose Aldo, Ronda Rousey, Anthony Pettis, and Demetrius Johnson. Standing next to Brian Stan, Rich Franklin, Johnny Hendricks, recently deposed welterweight champion Johnny Hendricks. Bas Rutten there. One time I saw Bas Rutten at an MMA event at a casino in Santa Barbara, California, the Chumash Casino. They had some fights there. I was sitting right behind him. I was like, "There's Bas Rutten." I wanted to say hello. I wanted to take a picture with him, but I was nervous. You know, I don't just go around approaching people in any industry. But as it turns out, he's a very friendly guy, and I could have done it. He's very friendly and personable. Dan Hardy, one of my favorite figures as well. I always knew that he would make a great-looking, fun-looking figure, the only figure to have a mohawk, I believe. Kimbo Slice, man, I love Kimbo Slice. I've been following him since he used to fight in backyards and parking lots, and I'm sorry that his MMA career didn't really work out. There are the, I was going to say UFC NECA, 18-inch Pacific Rim figure. So, again, this is sort of my Warriors shelf. Got the UFC fighters, got the Predators, and got the Pacific Rim robots. Rich Franklin, of course, one of my favorite fighters. And Frank Mir, I'm coming from the side. This is an odd angle. I'm actually not even able to see what I'm seeing when I was filming this. But there's Antonio Bigfoot Silva and Frank Mir, Chael Sonnen there in the back. Shane Carwin. There's the other Nogueira there, which is the newer version of the previous one that we saw a moment ago. So this is, I believe, yeah, this is, I may get a couple more figures. I may get a Glover Teixeira. I'm not certain who else I might be missing. Joe Lozon. Yeah, I think I want to get a Joe Lozon. So there's maybe about 5 fighters that I'm officially missing that I would like to get if the price is pretty decent. I'm also excited about this set because this is my largest collection within my collection. I've got a lot of Predator figures. I've got a lot of Gears of War figures. I've got Puppet Master figures by various makers. Full Moon toys and so forth. But this is my largest collection within my collection. Maybe I do have a lot of wrestling figures. I do have a lot of WWE figures. If I were to put them all out and display them, they may rival this setup. But this really I hold this dear because this is not only a beautiful collection that I'm proud to own, but I'm a huge fan of the UFC and have been watching it since it first started. I mean, since my brother-in-law Larry said, "Hey, do you want to watch a videotape of guys fighting in a cage?" I'll never forget. And I said, "Hell yes, I want to see that." And I've been a fan ever since. Of course, for those of you who might have been around as long as I have and seen what I've seen, we do miss a lot of the old no holds barred glory days. But you know, the UFC is what it is today. And there it is. There's my entire UFC figure collection. We also had a look at GSP and package and had a look at Bruce Lee. So I thank you for watching this, and see you next time.